Oh, I think I got it. We got a new URL there.
Good morning, everyone. I've just clicked original sound for musicians on here. That's the thing I always forget, so I'm just telling everyone that too, just in case you also always forget it.
Hello.
Shanda, sounding good. Was that Alex speaking then?
Yeah, still good? Cool.
Okay, are we ready to go now? Let me get all my background copies of this live stream.
I've got a lot of white noise in the background. One thing I had to do was mute my YouTube audio, obviously. If you're watching this, guys, sorry, just bear with us for a minute. We're just sorting a few things out.
Okay, hey everybody, we're going to get started here. Apologies for the tech snafu. Nothing like a Zoom update to screw up streaming keys, and who knows what the hell's going on in the cloud, but we managed to get things up. Thanks again for joining us for another Vector Deep Dive. Been working on a new firmware release that will be called version 3. The current beta is up now at forum.512.net, and the version numbers for the beta release are always 2.9 something. I think we're up to 2.9.21. I'll have another one out probably tomorrow or Monday. Steve and I have been working on some fill stuff and somewhat in collaboration with Shonda and Alex. And there are a bunch of other new features. I'll walk us through some of the basic stuff, and then we'll get into some of the more involved demos fairly soon. Let me get original sound on. Thanks for the reminder, Steve. Steve, I can't hear you.
That's because I had myself turned down. Apologies. Hi, everyone. Sorry, just bear with us for a sec. Jim, just your voice level up a little bit now, please.
Bring it up.
A tiny bit, yep. Maybe like 20% or something.
20%.
I don't talk in decibels. I talk in things that no one understands. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Just let us know in chat if you think that our voice, etc., is okay. Okay, Jim. Sorry. Let's keep going.
All right, hang on. Let me get to where I can see the chat now.
I can monitor the chat. That's fine.
All right, good.
Thanks, everyone.
So yeah, Firmware 3, we're going to be talking about that. Our special guests today are Trovarsi and Alex Anderson of ALX 106. ALX 106, is that how you say that?
Either or, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, and we're going to be playing some clips from their amazing set at KnobCon this past September. That was a really phenomenal set, and we're lucky to have a good video and audio recording of it. Steve's also composed some music using some of the features in the 3.0 firmware, so we're really excited to play that. And also, as always, glad to have Steve Turner here early morning in Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, fresh from a Richie Horton gig last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were partying it up.
I was a bit.
So, lucky you, man.
Yeah, it was good.
So, all right, so let's get started. I'm going to switch over to my demo cam, and I'm just going to kind of walk through some of the basic stuff that's new.
Jim, pin yourself?
Oh,
pin your...
Yeah, that I know how to do.
You beat me.
There we are. Yeah, clearly we haven't been doing this often enough. All right, so version on this vector is 2.9.21, and the first thing I want to show you is undo. So I'm going to move over to a fresh preset, and let's mute those drums for a second, and make sure my system sound is on. Okay, so I'm going to program a simple pattern in, and you know, it used to be anytime you were editing a pattern, you were editing the preset memory directly. But now when you're editing a pattern, you're editing a copy in an edit buffer. And this means that there are two new key commands, one to save the work you've been changing and one to revert it. And to save it, you use Q and next. So I've saved my work. Now I do some more edits. If I like it, great. If not, I can hit Q and previous, and now they're gone. So you can use this as you know, useful editing trick, right? You're trying some experiments, you save them as you go along. When you change presets, your changes are saved. But also you can use this as a performance technique. So you can have a pattern running and you want to hit evolve a few times. And then when you want to go back to the original pattern, Q previous. Very simple, very easy to use. Another thing I should mention. Yes, Steve. Oh, I thought you had something to say. Okay.
No, I just said very cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Another nice trick is I've been working on optimizing some of the lower level stuff so that loading and saving files is much less intrusive on what you're doing. So if I make a change and I want to save the project while it's running, I can do that and there's no glitch. And I know some of you, including a couple of people on this meeting, like to perform out and like to do longer sets, and this doesn't quite get us to seamless project changes while the transport's running, but it's getting us pretty close, and hoping to make more strides in that area soon. So that's undo, as well as a faster SD. Also, we now have onboard help, which will help with remembering little things like Q next and Q previous. We do have quite a few somewhat hidden key combinations, and the idea behind help is to make it easier to remind yourself what those are. So I hit the shift key twice, and now we have onboard help. I'm still filling in the pages, but the idea is that we'll have at least one page for every page on the vector. It's not quite intended to be an online manual. It's more about reminding you what you can do on a page that's not immediately obvious. So on the pitch page, you can use shift and twist to edit a note by octave. You can use encoder 9 to edit all of the notes. You can push an encoder to mute and unmute a step. Q plus encoder 9 will turn on follow steps, where the display will jump between the first 8 steps and the second 8 steps if you have a 16-step sequence. So forth and so on. And then there will also be a dedicated page for shortcuts that are system-wide. And to remember the double shift, I put it on the general preferences page, top right corner, double-click shift for help. And then this is something where I encourage you all to contact me, email, Messenger on Facebook, whatever works, Instagram. If there's some little tip or something that when you're using the vector you tend to forget, let me know about it and we'll get it into a help page somewhere. Okay, so Steve, you kept an eye on the chat. Anything I should...
Chris was just asking for confirmation on how the undo function works, and I just wrote, so how it works is you make your preset, you get your data in there for your preset stuff, you save it by either saving the whole project or the individual preset by hitting shift and the save button. That's correct. Yep, shift and next, sorry, shift and save, the blue button. And once you've done that, that becomes what you would revert to when you hit undo. So if I get a bunch of notes, I save them, I then make some changes without saving it again, and I hit shift previous, then that will go back to where I was prior to making the changes. So it's your last save version.
Yeah, and specifically for what Chris mentioned, if you let me get back to the pattern, and actually let me make this obvious. So I've zeroed out the pitches, still have a little bit of a gate thing going on. I hit Q next, and that saves the edit buffer into the preset. Now I can evolve, not very interesting there, so maybe change some things, and now I can evolve. When I undo this, it goes back to the last save marker, which was when I hit Q next. So if I hit Q previous, I'm back to the original.
Yeah, I think I said shift, I meant Q, sorry. But yeah, so Jim's obviously right. It's Q
Yes.
next, Q previous.
Triple click for drinking is in the next. We should have a vector drinking game, maybe. Maybe we do that for New Year's Eve.
Yes, I need a drinking game. That's a good one.
Like how many times you say the word Q?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Preset, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so another thing that's going on, there are some changes in sequence control, and something that's, I think, been around for a little while, but a lot of people don't know about, is Q parameters. And the idea is that you can push an encoder, change a value, and it doesn't become active until you press the encoder again. And this is active for all of the 8 parameters on this page. You can still change them normally, but let's say I'm doing something like that, but I don't want it to be changed immediately. I can
That is
queue it up.
super dope. I'm all about that.
Yeah.
I,
I have a question for you
Exactly.
though.
Yes.
So what setting do you need to have in global in order for that to?
No settings. That's automatic. That's
it
already
just
in.
works.
It's there right now.
Because okay.
And like I can cue that, and I'll cue transposition. I'll go up a fifth, and I'll shorten to 3 steps.
And you're just hitting the Q button?
Yeah. So here's a little trick. So you got a pattern, and I save that, and I start playing with these settings. Right, I can use undo to undo the changes I made here.
Chris has got a great question, Jim, and I
Mhm.
believe I know the answer. However, I'm not 100% sure. Chris Meyer from Learning Modular and Aliasone has asked, since they are queued, do they happen at the system interval such as bar line? As in, is your reversion back to the saved version immediate, or is it quantized somehow?
Right now they're immediate, but
Yes.
it'll be quantized to the next step.
I didn't
basically
know
is the way the
that, and
sequence
it's
works.
wow. And that,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. Because
Yeah.
I didn't actually even consider that as an option until Chris said it, and now I think we
Yeah,
should.
I mean, there's certainly something I can pursue. This is one of these things, and this is why I like to have a long beta cycle for big changes like this, is to get
Yeah.
feedback from people on, is that really necessary, or is that just kind of that timing come naturally when you're using it in performance? But I know, like, you know, I perform with Chris off and on, and I know he likes to be able to queue things up to happen actually 2 bars out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
That's a lot of forward planning.
it is.
I didn't
It
even
is.
know what I'm going to be like in 2 bars time, let alone what the music's going to be like.
Yeah.
I do want to say a point, like I just went into my global setting
Uh-huh.
and I had to change my encoder knob back to normal.
Okay. Okay.
Just to, yeah, because that it wasn't working because I
What
have
was
it
it?
so when you push the encoders, it goes to the part, so it jumps to that part.
Right, right. Yeah, it doesn't override the custom encoder setting. You're right.
So it has to be set to normal
Mm-hmm.
in order for it to work. Okay, cool.
All right. Next page in sequence control. I've moved things around a bit, and I've also started using longer labels for things because some of the label abbreviations were getting to be a little ridiculous. Also, I'm trying to reorganize things so that, you know, your top level controls, these are the classic ones, these aren't going to change. But then the next level down are things that you're likely to want to access during a performance.
So just to go into that, probably the screen isn't clear for everyone. Could you go back to the one that says randomize on it, and we'll just show how the lineup of the text works for people. It's very intuitive. So you've got randomized, and then you've got the 2 words underneath that apply to that setting. So the capital ones up the top is like your umbrella, and then the 2 little ones. I think I don't know what that says from here.
Hang on. Let
Oh,
me get a
here we
little
go.
extra focus going on here. It's a little bit better.
Is that velocity and timing? Yes.
Velocity and timing.
So
Yep.
they're the 2 elements that you can randomize under that umbrella. So I think it's really neatly laid out, and there's a couple like that where you've got like your overall thing and then the elements of it.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. And then the reason I spread out generate and evolve is I want to be able to add a generate parameter here. And I think we're going to end up with at least one other fill parameter, so I'm not quite sure. That'll probably take these 2. I don't know. All this is likely to be a little bit more rearranged before we're done. Fill enable is to enable fills for this part. We'll talk about that in the next section. But it's important to note that you have to enable it for each part. Fills are global in the sense that they can affect all the parts at once. And for, say, drum parts, you can enable for specific lanes. More on that in a bit. Free run, I've added free run velocity. So to review free run gate, let's set this to 3. So now my gate sequence is only 3 steps while everything else is still 8 steps. And I don't have everything patched up for velocity on this voice, but I will soon. And a little shout out to Devin Weston of Weston Precision Audio for setting me up with these modules, the dual oscillator and the dual filter, dual stereo filter I think is what it's called. They sound amazing, and I'm really looking forward to using them in new projects. So we have free run, gate, and velocity. We have masking, and we'll come back to that after we talk about fills. Next page over. So the randomize for velocity and timing, as Steve mentioned, this is much more understandable. Before it was just, I don't know, it was really short. I think it was var velo and var time or something, kind of a bit hard to understand. All your pitch related stuff, key, scale, and tuning is here. I also want to be able to add a random detune function here, which will basically, for each note that goes out, we'll be able to generate a random detune amount.
Vintage mode for the vector, amazing.
Vintage mode, yeah.
Yeah.
And then as we dive further down into things that change less often, here's where the extra text really helps, right? Because preset quantized used to be PQNT, reset on preset change was ROPC. Chance bar mode was chabar, I think, which was fun to say, but kind of meaningless. So really trying to work through and make these things more readable. MIDI page down here hasn't changed. So let's see. So that's kind of an overview of what's going on in the sequence control pages. Moving things around, adding a few things. Yeah. So,
Jim, just from a development perspective, I imagine that a lot of these changes are things you've made because of queries you've had about how do I do this, or looking at people trying to do things. Is that sort of informed what you've tried to make a bit more explicit from the screens here?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, they're kind of like three different approaches. One is them to add things that I've always wanted to add myself. Right?
Yes.
And things that had been planned for months and years ahead that I finally get a chance to put in. And the other one is to respond to user requests, specifically like things where I'm trying to do this in a performance and I can't, or it's difficult. And so how can I make that possible and easy to use? And then the third aspect is like, how do I do these things and maintain what programmer would say is a mental model, right? Is to be consistent with the way that the vector works already, so that these changes feel natural. And this is tricky now because we've got a lot of buttons and controls here. We got the screens. We can get away with a lot, but still we've been adding a fair number of somewhat hidden features, right? And adding the help, adding more detailed labels in the settings is a way to help mitigate that, so that if particularly if you're new to the vector, we want to maintain that like very easy to get started sort of thing, and then allow it so that you can discover these new features as you need them. And I think really having the onboard help is going to make a big difference, because you may jump there to look for something else, and you go, oh, this is how I enable fills or masked modulation.
Yeah.
This how this works.
And I think for people who are coming to the vector pretty new or newish, they're going to absolutely love it. For me, being a stubborn set in my ways bloke, when I sort of saw the changes at the beginning, I'm like, oh no! And then now that I've been using it more, it's like, oh no, this is really good. So if anyone's out there looking at it going, I'm a little bit lost, who moved my cheese kind of thing, just keep playing, and it's going to make a load more sense.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this is why I like to do long beta cycles, is send me feedback, right? And I can't always accommodate everything, but and often I'll say, yeah, that's a good idea, and then nothing will happen for a while, and that's because it takes, I have to let things kind of ferment a little bit, and considering how it affects other features and things.
Sure. And the under the bonnet stuff that you talked about for the undo and the quick save function and all that, I mean, it can't really be overstated just how much work things like that are, that then the rest of the feature requests sit on top of that. So, yeah. I guess there's that. And I'm just paraphrasing a little. Can I ask a question from the group, Jim?
Yeah.
So, Toke has asked, any chance of user programmable scales?
Yes, I have notes on that. Basically, I was waiting to get fills a little further along. What I'm currently thinking is that there would be some number of custom scales stored in globals,
Yes.
and on the control page in scale, you'd be able to select one of those, and there'd be some way to manipulate it on the fly using the mini keyboard. But also you'd be able to go in globals, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but this is the edit page for fills. There'd be like an edit page for custom scales. And
Great.
so you'd be able to pick a name, select the notes that are in the scale. This would just be for 12 tones per octave scales, at least for a while. But I know that's a frequent request. Another frequent request that isn't in here yet is template projects.
Yes.
That's also getting higher on the list. And again, I'm not setting a deadline on this, right? It's not like I got to get this finished by Christmas, right? So right now we're just at the point where fills are really useful, and there are a few extra things to add in there. And then also with masked modulation, and then there'll be a few other new things coming along. So this isn't necessarily like everything that's going to be in 3 and you have to wait another year for like 4.0 to get your stuff, right?
You guys heard it first. Finished by Christmas. Excellent. Right.
Yes. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Where's that drink button again?
Anyway. All right.
All right. So I'm gonna show something else new, and demo gods hopefully will be with me. So currently, pitch 1 and gate 1 are feeding this synth voice here. So I've got, let me pull this down a little bit. I got a dual oscillator here, a mixer. I'm using this side of the dual filter and the top 2 envelopes on the quadra. And the VCA is hidden over here in the dark. And this is a dual oscillator synth voice. Those of you familiar with the vector will know that that's set up on the routing page, and I'm using pitch 1, gate 1 for the voice overall, but for the second oscillator, I'm actually have pitch coming out of pitch 5, which is right here on the expander. And this is a trick I like to do often, is even if it's a dual oscillator monophonic voice, if I have a pitch output available, I will run a separate pitch connection to it, because sometimes I'll run that part in chord mode, and that way I can tune the second oscillator in semitones separate from the main oscillator. And I'm not doing that here, but it's a nice little trick I wanted to mention. But new with this firmware is, instead of just selecting a part to output, I can go and I can choose one of the MIDI inputs. And so I'm selecting JX MIDI, which is the jack expander MIDI here, pitch 1, gate 1, and let me go to part 5 and do that here as well. Alright, now I have to zoom out a little bit so you can see what's going on. Oh, without twisting the camera. Let's go about there, and let's slide things over a bit so you can see the instrument. Lock things down a little bit. So I've got a instrument over here, which is my personal favorite input device, and I've got MIDI from the instrument coming into JX MIDI on the expander, and I've got my outputs for this synth voice coming from JX MIDI instead of another part. So now I can play this part on the instrument. And Steve, I told you last night I didn't have pitch working yet, but it seems to be working. So pitch bends.
Oh my goodness. What do you mean seem to be? As in you did the thing, or?
I guess I got lucky and the code was already there.
Oh, wow.
So we now have a built-in MIDI through. So if you've got a keyboard and you want to route it into an analog voice or to another MIDI part, you can do that. And another trick I like to use, I have a Fader Fox UC4, and I like to use this as a MIDI controller into the HX Stomp. And but I also like to send MIDI clock to the HX Stomp. So what I do is I patch the Fader Fox into the vector, and I send MIDI from that to MIDI out 1, which goes into the HX Stomp, and then I will also set MIDI sync out for, this is MIDI 1, turn that on. So basically I've got a MIDI source from the UC4 and MIDI clock from the vector sent out over this cable into the HX Stomp. So this means that, you've just got a lot more flexibility in terms of how you route MIDI around in a system where you're using the vector.
Brilliant.
Very cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. Any questions from the
Yeah, there was
chat
one
stream?
from Acid Energy, I imagine is how that's pronounced. He wants to know, or she, anyone, here I have opened a can of worms, haven't I? Can I switch patterns from a DAW via MIDI program change or some other command?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Also so let me get back. If you're anywhere on the system, you press globals once, and you're in the general section, and there are 7 pages here. And,
Only 7?
We'll get more later. We'll skip over fills from now. And you can see that I need to go through and do kind of the magic longer text trick on these guys.
Yeah.
But on page 6, we have program change in, and you can turn this on for any of the 3 inputs. USB-B, which is this jack that will go to your computer, USB-A, which would be from a plugged-in keyboard or something, and JX MIDI, which is the MIDI input here on the expander. And,
so I'm not an Ableton guy, but I imagine that if I was, being able to set up a scene that set a MIDI thing to the vector that said, yep, change the system state over there on the Eurorack land would be kind of cool.
Absolutely. And there is one thing to keep in mind, and this goes for sending program changes to the vector as well as from the vector to something else, say a digitact, is that the vector by default program preset changes happen on a bar line. And
Yes.
if you have an Ableton clip and you're going to send a MIDI program change, and the details are in the manual, but basically the first 8 channels 1 through 8, will send program changes to the vector, and I believe it's channel 16 will send scene changes. But in Ableton, if you're triggering a clip and you want to send that program change message in that clip, you need to go into control and change the preset quantize to off. Otherwise, your change will be a bar late. Or if you can arrange your Ableton set so that you can have some sort of, like you have a clip that you trigger a bar early that sends the program change, and then I guess you can do a follow action to jump to the clip after that to hold that change. I don't know. I'm not the Ableton expert here.
We probably have some around, but that sounds like you've covered that. And just to go back to Acid Energy's question about can you do it from external to the vector, absolutely you can. And as Jim pointed out, you can also do the vector to other devices to change presets or programs or banks or whatever. And that's super powerful, super fun.
Yeah, and just to note where that is, it's it's on the control page, each preset. And these CCs are for the CC lanes under velocity, but bank and program. So you can say bank 1, program 3. For the bank output, you can say which CC carries the bank message. It varies per synthesizer. You set the program number, and you can send normally, which means it's sent as soon as you trigger it. Or you can say, norm is send it on the bar line when the preset changes.
Yeah.
Early is to send it early, meaning as soon as you trigger the preset. So if you want to change a preset on the next bar, you'll trigger it on, say, beats 2 or 3 of the previous bar. If you
Okay.
want to send it early, that'll send the program change out early. If you're sending to, say, a digitact or another sequencer that's going to quantize on a bar line, this will allow that device to get the message early so it can cue and change on the downbeat.
Thank you, Jim. And that was a really good question, Acid Energy. Michael Hales jumped in, and I'm just going to paraphrase what he's written here. And if I make some mistakes, please forgive me. So there's a Max for Live device that can move triggers back in time, which sounds pretty amazing. So the trigger can be at the beginning of the bar, but also trigger sometime in the previous bar. Now, obviously, I've not tested that. I'm just reading out what Michael's saying there. So thanks for that. Also, Ain't No Picnic, or This Is Not a Picnic. Is it possible to apply a different swing per track or per part? I imagine.
All right. So in a part, there are a couple places you can do swing-based timing variations. So in globals, you can set a master swing here, and this is basically global for the whole system.
Yes.
But also in a part, on the gate page, the subpage, there's one for groove, and you can push things in different directions here, step by step. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the pattern has to maintain a reference as to where down is.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to change every step. This is not a good place if, say, you want the whole part to be a little ahead of everybody else. The thing to do there is to bug me about adding some sort of output time shifting on different parts.
Output time shifting on different parts as a feature request. Okay.
Yeah. I'll do it tonight. No, just
yeah. No, don't say these things. We take it seriously. But
but I mean, and that gets to a point about updates in general, right? Is I need to run a full set of tests on sync and timing and how to solve issues involving sync and timing, specifically when you're mixing, a laptop, which over in the corner right here is a laptop that I use for mixing these days. And then I've got analog gear here, and then I've got some MIDI gear off screen. And if you're trying to fine tune a large system with, one sync source, multiple sync recipients, different types of CV and MIDI, it can get fairly complicated. And so one of the parts of the 3.0 dev cycle I want to work on is making sure that when the vector receives sync, it transmits sync as soon as possible. And then if there's some way that I can make it easy for you to say, oh, I want to shift this bass line behind a little bit because this other synth is behind, and I want to push my analog bass behind so they stay in sync with each other. That's something else I'm going to be looking into.
Fantastic. And thanks, Michael, for dumping a bit more information in the chat. I'm going to leave it there as far as people can catch up and read that in real time if they need to. But that looks like, I think it's called Pickup Notes, and it's a Max for Live device, I think, is the gist there. Great. Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
I don't think I've missed any questions. If anyone has posted a question that I haven't read out, please repost it and say Steve in capital letters. That'd be great.
Okay. All right. So I want to. Our guests today have a busy schedule, so I want to go ahead and jump over and change the conversation and talk with Trovarsi and ALX a little bit about what they've been doing lately. And let me remove the spotlight on my screen. And kind of like how did you guys decide to start working together, and how do you actually manage that, right? Because you both have been doing techno shows on your own for quite a while, and both very capable musicians, and then all of a sudden I started seeing you playing together and doing duo sets, and also very amazing. And in particular, just the interaction, like just watching the two of you, you're having a good time and you're talking to each other and coming up with ideas, and you hear the ideas come in, and it's just really kind of amazing. So just tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Alex, you go first.
Over to you, Alex.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm trying to remember how we got started playing together. Because our first show was in Denver, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, it was like you had hit me up and asked me, you were going through like homies and hitting people up about like just jamming and like making a record or like recording stuff, and like you and like I think you and Jim and Chris Meyer all got together, right? I know you and Chris
Yes.
Meyer did. And so you would so yeah, Trovarsi had planned this trip out to Denver to like make some music with me, just to hang out. And then like a couple weeks later hit me up and was like, so actually I booked a show in Denver. And it was like this show that I had been wanting to play for a while, but I didn't know the person who was throwing it. So it was called Acid Night, and it was in Denver. And so it was like, so I booked that, and it's during like the time I was going to come out anyway. So let's just do that show instead of like recording. So she came to my house and hung out for a little bit, and I think we played for like 30 minutes, and then she like looked at me and was like, I think we're good. And I was like, okay.
That's brilliant.
That works. And then like she came over the next day and was like, we played for like another 25 minutes, and then it was like, I think we're good. And it was like, okay, I guess we're good. And so then we went and played the show, and we played about an hour and a half, and it was really good, and it was really fun. And like I messed up recording that one because like the recorder I had left on like external mics or internal mics instead of external mics. So we got a really nice recording of like us yelling at each other the whole time, being like, all right, this is what we're gonna do next.
I think that would be really cool to listen to. You know?
Yeah, we've talked about
for
putting
sure.
that out
More for
on
Gene.
Patreon or something.
I like it, Steve. Yeah, I think we're good.
We're good.
Good sample.
I'd wear that T-shirt.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it. And then NobCon came around, and we were both going, and both like had been booked to play. So it was like, why don't we let someone else play by just playing together? And then that gives NobCon another slot to have someone else play. And we enjoyed playing together so much that we just made that happen at NobCon. And that was what year was that? Was that 2021 NobCon?
Yeah, I think it was last year.
Yeah. So that was the first one after COVID.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 2021, and then we did 2022 this year, and we've just been continuing to do that. We did a Boiler Room sponsored event at LA festival called Reform that was really fun. We've played Patched Out in Denver, and we
Velocity. We played Velocity
in Seattle together, and we also did what else was there?
I know. I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Those are the ones that I was thinking of.
We have a show coming up in LA next month.
Yeah.
Cool.
At Gold
when
Diggers.
And where?
Yeah, so that's January 26th at Gold Diggers.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're really excited about that. And yeah, so that was pretty much it. I mean, you have anything to add to that?
I mean, well, other than like, I really like our vibe, you know, like I felt like when I was like, I think we're good, like I meant it, like in the sense of I felt very comfortable and confident and trusting Alex and his ability to create music. I've always liked his music. So for me, that was like, I thought it was going to be inspiring to work with him in general. And then when we got together, like, I felt like we had an immediate synergy of like a good vibe.
Yeah, so. And I think that whenever we play, it's like if either of us get anxious, the other one just kind of helps like remind the other one that like we're there to have fun with each other, and like if we're not having fun, then what are we doing? And I think that that's been like really cool in playing together, is that like both of us are like very okay with that and accepting of that, and like, you know, we've had really good sets, we've had good sets, you know. Excuse me.
No, I have to agree.
You know,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think particularly when you've been playing solo a lot, to have the opportunity to work with a collaborator, particularly for a high pressure show, can be a real relief, right? Because, you know, there's someone you trust there that you can rely on, and you don't feel quite so alone when you're up there.
Yeah, and we do, so much improvised stuff together. Like when we're playing together, it's mostly improvised music. And when I play alone, like there are shows that I play mostly improvised, and then there's shows that I play like completely, planned. And like I'm playing tonight in Denver at the Black Box with Richard Devine, the other Richie in the room. Or the other Richie we're talking about today. But
Yeah.
I'm doing that, and that show tonight is like I really want to plan everything I'm doing, and I want to play like more songs, like stuff that I've either put out or that I'm gonna put out, and I want to be like more song oriented. And so like when we play together, I feel like it's a lot more. It's really inspiring to be more improvised. And there are sets where we're like we've got these patterns and stuff ready to go, and we know like each other's sound enough. And when we had played a few times together, it was like we started to know each other's patterns too. So it was like we kind of had some canned stuff that we could actually play more than once. But for the most part, it's improvised. And having someone in that is, so stress relieving and also so inspiring, because it's like, oh, you just made something completely new. That's cool. I can make a bass line to that. Or you just made a bass line. I can make a lead line to that. And that's like super fun to do. And with the tools that we've been given these days, like, it's with the vector and with like the Metron sequencer and, these different tools that we have at our fingertips, it's like we actually have the ability to improvise in front of people and not make it like cringe, hopefully.
Right.
So like if you're in a show, that's what the communication about is, right? Is like, hey, I want to put in a new bass line, and then the other person can make a little room for it, and they can bring it in, and then you can respond to that. And
Exactly.
Or key
like,
and stuff, or
yeah, keys. What do you have something like, hey, we've been playing this a while. Do you have something? No. Okay, I'm gonna dive in my headphones. So you carry it for a minute, and I'll go dive in my headphones, and I'll go make something. And we've even done it to where it's like she'll hand me her headphones and be like, "You think this is cool?" And I'll listen. That's amazing.
yeah.
I love
so that's
that.
been fun too. It's just like it's kind of whatever we feel. But like when we first started playing, there was a lot of that going around where it's like, here, listen to my headphones really quick. And that's always fun to do.
cool. And specifically for the KnobCon show, because I'll be playing a few minutes of that set, how much preparation specifically for the beginning of the show, right? Like I assume you kind of said, okay, we want to start with this, and you do a couple sound checks to make sure that that's right. But I mean, it was a long show, right? Like 45 minutes or so. And so how much of that was planned out and how much of it was improvised?
Do you remember?
Yeah, I think we chatted about it. Like we were like, yeah, so I think we should just maybe come in with sound like this, and then we kind of chatted about it. Like had like an idea of how we were going to start, and then that was it. We're like, how should we start?
The pattern that we like. So I feel like for KnobCon, I was like, hey, I have a pattern that's pretty chill. So maybe we start with that, and then we can go from there, and we can go up from there. But I had I had a pattern that was like, hey, this is pretty like the energy level is just like pretty chill, but it's like a good starting point. So let's start here and then see where we can go from there. But I'd say that like on any given thing, and like the KnobCon show, that one was probably at least 50-50 improvised. And most of the time we swing more improvised. So it's like, getting into the 60-40 or whatever zone. But I'd say that it's at least 50-50.
Yes.
I love hearing this because I'm fairly new to even trying to perform electronic music or even techno itself. But I've got a couple of mates locally. They're also Vector users, and they've also got a bunch of WMD hardware each, top blokes. But we play a bit, and sometimes, you can be sitting there playing something, and it sounds amazing and stuff, but we don't have that forward thinking, okay, let's keep it good all the time thing right yet. We're still evolving towards that point. And I guess from a selfish perspective, Alex and Shando at Trovarsi, how do you sort of vet yourself with those ideas? I mean, obviously you had the cans over sometimes and say, what do you think of this? But like, I mean, obviously there's years of experience here in what you're doing. Just like any musical undertaking, it takes years of experience. But sort of what would you say to people sort of more in my situation where I'm learning the evolution of ideas in real time? Because that's what I want to get better at. I mean, is there any tips you'd give someone like me in that regard?
Sure.
Please.
Yeah, like, well, one of the main things aside from handing the headphones and sharing the ideas that way, but the other thing is that we've both played in bands, and whether you played in a band or not, like, it's just still having the philosophy and the mentality of not trying to run over each other, and being respectful, and like, like it's like I think of it as the jazz band, because it's more important to play tight and in the pocket than it is to solo over the top of each other, and then you'll have your moments to shine naturally, I think, as like to do that solo-esque thing or whatever. But I think mainly that's like the main way we like to think of it and approach it is, try to sonically be in the pocket
Yeah.
with each other. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I mean,
resonates.
yeah, I play bass and drums a lot, and those are the instruments that I played in bands a lot, and so for me it's like the bass is all about just making the room shake and like, taking it out, and when you bring it in, having people be like, holy shit, that's really cool, and then that's it. And then, with the drums, it's like I have times where I can, do crazy master effects and really build things to be a wall of sound and then strip it away. But those are kind of my tricks, and the most I really get to, or the most I really like honestly, to like solo on top, whereas Trovarsi's doing like the leads and stuff and like the 303 lines. So I feel like I give her that freedom to like really like rip that stuff, and maybe I'll add a master effect to embellish a moment, but I'm really trying to just like be the bass where she can go gnarly and get wild and then come back. And then sometimes we switch those roles.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that like coming up with ideas and vetting ideas on the fly, like for me, one of the things that I always mention to people is less is more, less notes is more. Like especially in a techno style, but in any style, like big chord progressions and big lead lines with lots of notes and stuff can be impressive, but they can also make the mix muddy really quickly.
Yeah,
So,
and
like,
I find, yeah, and as someone who tends towards a lot of notes, because I used to be a guitarist, I found that too. That once you've taken things to that level, it's hard to pull back or do anything else afterwards, because you've sort of already, you've
yeah,
done
exactly.
that, and it's like, And one of my friends just corrected me. That's Ed Rubber Ducky. He said, "Speak for yourself. I always sound good." So yeah, okay. The bad things in our jams are to me. That's true. Okay.
Yeah.
So just moving on. But yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for the insight there. That really was really fun to ask you that question.
Cool.
Yeah,
All right, so I'm gonna cue up a little of this music we've been talking about, and then we'll have a few more questions. Let's give me a second to get the share going here. And then Steve, just give me a thumbs up if on the sound level.
That was really, really fun.
Yeah,
That was really good.
it was amazing.
I would have
It's,
I would have spilled beer on the floor listening to that. Absolutely.
So
You,
no,
wait,
I was,
Alex, you're muted.
There was plenty of beer spilt on the floor.
Yeah, the old this dance move here, you know, when you got the beer up. And, oh no, not sure.
No, I love that bit watching you both programming new sequences that you're going to be pulling in. I just think that's badass. I mean,
Yeah, confidence.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And the whole set, it's about an hour and 15 minutes. It's on YouTube.
Oh.
One of us will pop the link up in the chat line somewhere. We'll definitely add it to the comments on the live stream afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll play a little bit more of it at the end of the stream. But yeah, that was awesome, and that was a great set to see. I mean, it was really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. So, comment from Rubber Ducker. I've got to say that slowly. Rubber Ducker. Sounded amazing. Alex, how's your back after playing on that coffee table?
I
hour
definitely
and a
hurt
quarter.
myself on that one.
Sorry?
I definitely hurt myself at that one.
Yeah, yeah. Ergonomics.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that like next Monday, because I flew home like the day I flew home, I was hurting for sure.
Well, that's not good to hear at all.
Yeah, it's funny. Playing on low tables is the worst. We're working on it every time, but like every time we do it, it's like, oh man, why did we do it like this?
Yeah, in the moment, a lot of times you're just more keen to get the gig going. Let's get the music, you know, people here, let's do all that. But then
Yeah, whatever. Let's just do it.
we're all
Yeah,
humans,
exactly.
you know. So, but yeah, no, fantastic. It did sound great. I really like the dynamic changes there, the confidence in taking risks as well, and just knowing that it was either going to be like you said before. Sometimes we have good jams, sometimes we have really good jams, you know, and it's that level of confidence and risk taking.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the fun part about it. And the just listening to, like, you know, someone said in the chat too, like just listening is so important. And, you know, just like just like being able to hear what the next person's got, and then, you know, like you said, confidence and that's going to be cool, and just like figuring out whether or not what you're doing already works with it, and if it doesn't, like figure out a nice graceful way to get out and come into the next spot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's key.
Yeah, and I mean, I think something about it is because it's live composition and there's so much improv, you can feel that kind of energy. And I mean, it's great to see a well-practiced executed performance, but there's something really interesting, and I think this particularly for the modular community is going out there with the system, and you've got your skeleton of your set, but you're filling it out on the fly, and you're incorporating like the vibe of the room and your feedback from your performing partner. I think that really makes it special.
Yeah, I was really excited to see all the queuing stuff that you were showing, because like that's basically like what we designed Metron around, was queuing, and being able to do the drums and stuff, like if we're sharing kind of duties and stuff, and it's like I'm really excited to be able to do both the queuing and the undo, because I think that both of those are going to be like helpful to my workflow that I've already been doing. And with those sets, it's like Trovarsi's got the vector, I've got the Metron, and so it's like she's able to do like more like acid lines and like even chord stuff and all of that, where I was like just really handling like drums and bass, and that's been really fun to see those work together. And vector is a really great master clock as well for Metron. Metron has had some problems with certain master clocks, and it just is rock solid with vector.
Excellent. And I think something that when I was playing around with fills earlier today is, with the fill stuff, which we'll cover next, but also undo and some of the other changes, is you can get yourself in a position where you've got several things in movement and you need to kind of get everything back into a groove at one time. And I think scenes are going to be the key for that when everything's on the vector. But I think also it could be really useful to have a trigger out that's like, okay, this is the reset trigger. Like, so if you've got a Metron going in conjunction with a vector and you're going to trigger everything back into the groove, somehow you can use that trigger either on the Metron or in some other patch to kind of get everything back into normal.
Yeah, Metron has assignable ends, so you could do like and one of the assignable ends is like go back to the A variation. So you could do everything on a different variation, and very, very similar to what you're talking about, how vector works, and just like go mess up this variation, and then it gets a trigger and it goes back and everything's back to normal.
All right. Super cool. No, something we'll definitely be looking into. All right, anything else before we move on to the land of the fills?
Excited to see it. Fun
I'm excited.
It's been a while since we've watched that, so that was fun.
All right, Steve, how did we talk about handling this? Do I do a simple walkthrough, or we play your video, or?
Oh, I can do a bit of an introduction to it and then play the video. I'll move my camera and then I'll do a bit of a discussion about fills afterwards.
All right, so we're going to start with a piece that Steve wrote this week, where he's using fills in an automated fashion to provide regular variation into his drum patterns. And let me get that queued up here.
So while you're doing that, basically this piece of music started as just a couple of presets to look at how drum fills work. I then turned it into a piece of music, I guess. You'll see me doing almost nothing during the performance because I'm just hitting the scene buttons, because I've got all of the fill stuff being programmed from subsequences within the vector preset. So that means I started off with maybe 3 drum beats. That's all the piece is. But then in the different scenes, those drum beats or drum patterns have various amounts of modulations to create variations. So I don't just use fills like, okay, here's bar 4 or beat 4 or whatever, and I'm just gonna hit the fill button. It's more like I've got a pattern, I want to add and remove stuff, and that's how I kind of use fills as well, to create variation rather than just a fill, so to speak. Anyway, you'll hear it, and there's a couple of things I'll talk about once that's played. Thank you, Jim.
All right, here we go. Dude,
That
that
was
was
really
great.
cool. Yeah.
Thanks. I had a lot of fun with that. It was shaking the walls in my house, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a bit going on there. Like the reason my hand's jumping around so much is because there's quite a few timing things going on in that piece, and for me to get the transitions from each scene right, I had to really carefully count which pulse I was on, because there was some sort of 6/8 stuff going on, or some dotted eights and things, and I didn't want the phrases. I wanted them to finish correctly, like before transitioning to the next one. So I just had to stay on top of it.
Cool. Steve, I think you need to turn on Mirror My Video for your vector demo.
What does that mean?
Well, your vector is switched left to right versus right to left. Everything's
It looks okay. Oh, yes. In you're right. Obviously, you're right. In Zoom, it's the wrong way around. So if I do
it,
this, hang on a sec.
it,
Let me
I know
flip
you can do it in Zoom video settings.
How's that?
There we go.
Great.
Okay, sorry, I didn't have my glasses on when I set it up. I can't see anything. Okay, all right. Thanks to that. Now, what I'm going to do is just have a quick look at fills. I've done a separate sort of how-to video on this while the features were still being worked out, which I think mostly is still valid. But what I'm going to do is show you what I've got set up here first. So I've got 2 drum parts set up. I've got a kick on part 7, just a kick by itself, and on part 8 I've got a couple of little hat things going on, which are samples from a Crucible, it turns out. Yes, and so what that sounds like is just basically on its own, right? Pretty simple. Now, what else I've done is on part 7. I go to the second page of control, so you press control twice, and what I end up here is I've got fill enable, default is off, and then what Jim's done is he's put in the ability to have fill on certain lanes of a voice. Now remembering this part or voice is a drum part has 4 lanes. I can apply fills to all of it, or just 2 to 4 onwards, 3 to 4 onwards, or just 4. Why would you do that? Well, since we've used the word techno a lot today, one of the defining aspects of that is the kick is stable pretty much. So if I do a fill, I might not want the fill to change what my kick's doing. Okay, and this isn't just about techno, this is just about ability to apply a fill to certain lanes. But it's just an example of why you might do that. Okay, so the next thing that happens is if I want fills to work, which I do, sorry, I'm just confusing myself with my... Here we go. So in the global screen, you go to screen 2 or page 2 of 7, and what you can see here is a lot of fun about to happen, because you've got up to 8 fill configurations or densities or programs, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Anyone who's a keen viewer of things like Henry will have noticed that those different fill settings are also reflected now in the lower row of the vector. It's replaced the dashboard view there. It's something we can talk about in a minute. But right now, what I've got is the 8 fill configurations, and you can see that I can add hits or remove hits. Now, think about that for a sec. A drum fill isn't always about adding more hits. Sometimes it's about actually leaving stuff out and creating a little bit of an anticipation or some other thing. Now, what I can do is we've set up a configuration for add and remove as defaults for the 8, and you can see that, well, hopefully you can see, but it starts from adding few notes and removing lots of notes, all the way up to adding lots of notes and removing almost none. And you can configure those yourself. If you just want to add everything all the time, then you can do that by just dialing it up and then saving it as part of your global settings. The other little bit of magic sauce in this is the pattern diagram over here. And this is something that when Jim showed it to me, I just loved it straight away. It's a way of basically saying, I want the fills to apply in certain parts of my bar or my preset. Now, where it's showing white, or the grey, white, that's showing the 4 lanes. So grey, white, 1, 2, 3, 4 lanes. And pattern 1
Steve,
is...
just for a second, on the video, it's hard to see it, but those 4 vertical stripes in person, you'll see
They're really clear.
each stripe has 4, white and gray sections, and it basically represents a 4-track, 16-step pattern of ons and offs. And as Steve dials through them, you get different patterns, and there'll be a set of probably 16 factory patterns, and then you'll be able to add your own patterns. Okay, you may continue.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for being the Steve in this conversation. So, so you can make those the patterns fill in, literally fill in, the various parts. So this one is obviously it's not a fill on step 1 or 5 or so on. And this enables you to actually have some sort of predictable control over the randomization that fills bring in. And for me, as someone who likes writing music and putting it together, but also likes bringing in some generative or randomized stuff, being able to control how much of it is randomized or generated. I know Chris Meyer's exactly the same, and he takes it to a whole other level. But that's the philosophy that's kind of behind the implementation of fills here. Didn't want something that just automatically turned chaos on, although you can do that. You can just set everything to on all the time, that's fine. But also you can make it quite tasteful. And in that piece I just demonstrated, that was the whole point. It was to say, I'm going to use fills, but I'm not going to manipulate anything in real time, and whatever happens, happens. So I almost had to say, like you're saying to the drummer, I'd like you to play like this, and then they go off and do it. And then you not quite sure what you're going to get back. It's all about the instructions or the you don't give people instructions, but you know what I mean. The things you say about the style. So beat, pretty simple. Now how do I get a fill? I hold down the Q button and I press one of the white keys. There are 8 white keys and there are 8 fill modes or fill configurations. So because I have nothing programmed into lanes 2, 3 or 4 on part 1, and I'm using 2 parts at the moment, but I'm only really getting fills out of part 1 because I just wanted to keep it simple. You'll hear the snare and a clap and a rim shot come in as the fills. So and when I release Q, it goes back to where I was. These are non-destructive fills. When I hit Q, nothing has changed in my preset. You haven't overwritten anything. And also, if you play a fill and you like it, well, just enjoy that feeling because you might not ever hear it again. So now I'm going to increase the interest levels a little bit. I'm going to go to fill enable 1 to 4, and then we're going to hear a little bit more regarding oh, that one's fun. You can hear the kicks being missed occasionally, and I love that stuff. Now in the real world, you're probably not just going to sit like that and just hold it down, but you could. The one thing that if I was going to finish that piece of music off for which I did the video, I would probably go back over the fill areas where things have been played, and I would move things around, copy paste, do things, and just touch it up a little bit. I probably don't need to, but I just like doing that stuff. It's good fun. So this is fill mode using the white keys as the source. Now if I'm on the gate screen, something happens too. Now you're not going to be able to see necessarily what's happening clearly, but I'm going to point to it. Above my finger there, there's a little box, really neatly drawn, really fine little figures in real life, and it says fill, and it tells me where it's coming from. Sorry, it tells me which fill it is. So if I'm run, and I hold Q, and I hit 7, that little box says fill 7. So while I'm watching my performance go back, I can see which fills are being implemented at what time. And I might hear fill 7 and think, ooh, every time that comes up, there's a bit too much going on, and I could go back and either change when fill 7 was happening and change it to fill 4 or something, or I could change the configuration of fill 7. So there's some nice little quality of life things going on with this fill mode that I think have been really well thought out from a musical perspective. Yeah, so I've spoken a bit. What I also wanted to get to was, let me go back to have it how I said it before, which is voices 2 to 4, lanes 2 to 4 rather. Now I'm going to go to modulation. The other thing I've got set up ahead of time before I throw back to Jim is external CV input to modulation with fill as a target. So I'm going to go to source, external 2, and I'm going to say fill right at the end here. Where's it gone? Sorry, I made a mistake. I'm not doing external. I'm where am I going?
Subsequence.
Subsequent. Sorry, thank you. My brain just ran out of energy for a second there, and that's what happens when it
Yeah,
does.
we've got fills that you can modulate the fill from a subsequencer now.
Yes, sorry.
We will add modulation from an external source later. We have masking modulation.
That's where yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll show that after we do fills. And then
Yeah.
something else to bring up that you may be wondering about is fill is a global operation, meaning when you turn it on using Q plus a white key, you can do it from pretty much anywhere, and it affects all 8 parts where you've enabled it. And for now, it's mostly working and useful for drums. We're going to add some things so that it can be used also for pitched parts.
Yes, I got confused with the mask bit versus the fill part. So anyway, without further ado, and I've messed up. What have I messed up? Part 7, subsequence.
Set your parameter target, or
yeah, I've just got a back parameter target fill enable on 0 1 4 half. Let's go there.
Yeah. So what Steve is doing is he's setting a parameter on a subsequence for fill, and then on each step of the subsequence, he can set the fill level that he wants, and also probably you want to set the rate so that it makes sense against your drum pattern, right? Quarter notes is a good pick.
And, alright, there we are. So what you can hear now that I've finished making mistakes all the time, is you can see that the modulation levels of the fill between 0 and 8 are being respected by it as it moves through. So what I get is a simple kick beat, because that's all it is that's configured on this part, because the hats are coming from part 8, right? So I'll mute those. So I could go here, and I could just dial things right up, right? Right, so everything there that's not the kick is being generated by the fill mode, and that's being controlled by the modulation controls there. So that's kind of all I had to really say about fill mode. The Launchpad that's off camera at the moment in row 8, as I said, has the 8 pads lit up in groups of 2, so you can just basically press them to enable your fills too. And you can also latch them on using the right-hand arrow key to the right of the control pads on the Launchpad in that vertical row. So you can latch fills on or remove them by using that arrow key on the far right.
Yeah, so I'll show that in a second.
Yeah, cool.
And let me get us back onto grid mode here. So yeah, Steve's track is all about using fill as an automated process to kind of liven up the drum track, right? And that's definitely a really interesting way to use it, and in particular because you can customize what each of those fill patterns is doing. And then another way to use it, of course, is in a live context. And you know, the two experts are here with us, and just now, I think this afternoon, Shonda started playing around with it a little bit, and I'm going to be filling in the fills in terms of functionality and adding new patterns. And let me switch back over to my demo system real quick, and I guess I'm going to slide the camera back so it's focused on the demo system, and I can zoom in a little bit. Still want to keep the Launchpad in there. And let me, excuse me, I just want to double check. Focusing. All right, so as Steve mentioned, on the session page, Right now in the build, the bottom row are for fills, and I'll show that in a second. And I've got an email. This used to be dashboard access, and we will provide a way to get back and forth. Just have to figure out how the UI will work. But if I, let's see if my original pattern is still available. I have to make a change because I was using MIDI through. Turn those back off. And unmute my drums. Alright, so I've got a monophonic pitch pattern and a simple drum pattern, and on the session page, let me enable fills, and don't have quite the drum sounds I'd like to have, but or the balance, but you get the idea. Is that I can activate the fills from the Launchpad. Basically just hit any of these keys and you can see the display on the vector will update to show you what's going on. You can also hold the rightmost button, which I call a scene button, and it will latch the fill, and then you can go and play the fills and they'll hold until you release the latch button.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And also we're thinking about these two rows above fills are for scenes. I'm sort of thinking of sliding these up in the layout, and these three rows are all for mutes. This row is for part mutes, and these two rows are for polyphonic part mutes, lane mutes for, in this case it's my drums.
Chords or your drums.
And yeah, if you've got, say, parts 7 and 8 as drums, you get this whole row. So pull these down so you've got your mutes and your fills all right here. And that can make for a really interesting performance interface.
Yeah, that would be more smooth, like if they're together like that.
Yeah, because then we would have this neat division where the bottom 4 rows are performance controls, and then the top 4 rows are, you know, more of your global controls, your arrangement controls, that sort of thing. And okay, any questions about fills before we move on? And you know, again, just send me feedback on what you think of the demos. You know, the techniques we're using. The beta's up on forum.512.net, and you know, still working through this, working on different patterns. I need to set up a way to store user patterns. But it's been a lot of fun so far, and I think it's a really interesting approach, because as a on the fly, doesn't change your pattern but gives you interesting variations. It's useful both for live improvisation and for sequencing some variation into your parts.
I have a question. When you're able to make your own fills, where are you going to be able to do that?
You would create a drum pattern, say 16 steps, so just like you would if you're writing a regular drum pattern. And then there'll be, you know, unfortunately, a key combination to write that into a fill. Or what it may actually be is in globals, in the fill edit, there'll be a way to say, you know, you dial up to a pattern and you say store part 8 as a fill, right, as a fill pattern. And it just stores the ons and the offs. It's not velocity levels or rate or sequence length. It'll just take 16 steps, ons and offs across the 4 lanes and write them into the pattern.
Will you be able to save those, Like the ones that you write so you can carry them into a new project?
Yeah, yeah. All of these settings are in globals, so they're in like your prefs folder on the vector SD card, and we got lots of room there to store these things. So we have room for a lot of patterns, and you know so basically what it gives you is a set of phantom drum patterns that you can pull in anytime you want, and then you can use the add and remove percent to control. Is it a complete override of your previous pattern, or is it somehow a mix of those two patterns?
Cool. Is there a way to snap back to the original fill settings?
Um, yeah, I mean, they're right now, just because of the way they're stored and the way the preset files work, you use Shift Edit Clear on this page only to reset to all the global fill patterns.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it's going to be interesting because I'm specifically limited to 8 patterns at a time because you have access to them. But I could also see that you may want to have, say, because these are globals, so they're across all your projects, is that you may want to have, say, different banks of fills, right? So you've got one bank that's for a live techno set, and you've got another bank that you're keeping in the background for something more down tempo, right? But that's just an idea, right? That's just me spitballing on live TV. But the nice thing is that in the project files, things are getting kind of tight space-wise. But in globals, we have lots of room, so we can put lots of patterns in here. And something I didn't talk about is we have a length modification ratchet, which will be called speed mod, and pitch, which will be called pitch mod. And so there will be a few more tricks that we can add to fill behavior in terms of, just other types of variations. And again, it's an interesting complement to chance operations, whereas chance operations are programmed random behaviors where you picked a behavior and the probability. The fill is another way to think about that sort of random modification to a pattern. And like chance ops, it doesn't change the pattern. It's a real-time modification of it. Okay. Shonda's muted.
Very
Yeah,
good.
I was talking to myself. I was like, I have a question and I forgot. It completely slipped my mind in the
All
moment.
right. Well, you can pop in later. Yeah. All right.
Brilliant.
So let's move on to our last topic, which is masked modulation. So I'm going to mute this drum part and go back to the pitched part. And I will start the sequence again.
I remember. Sorry.
Yes. No worries.
Is there a way that if you turn on record, can you record your fill into a pattern? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so say you like change your modulate, like, can you record that onto a part?
Not right now. I mean, we can talk about that. I mean, it's something that I knew would come up, but I don't have an answer for it yet. I mean, I knew that I wanted to, well, early on when I first had the undo buffers, I was like, oh, this will be great because you can like write the fill into the pattern and then people can modify it manually and then either save it or throw it out. And there is that possibility, but then once I got into the actual writing of the fill behavior, and it's there's so many possible options, it took a while for me to kind of like back down into a set of understandable changes. And right now they're all temporary. And so you activate the fill, and it's this interesting mix of your existing pattern and a new pattern, and has some randomness built in if you want so. And then you let it go and it's gone and you're back to where you were.
What's the length? Is that steps or beats or what is that?
Length will be the length of the sequence, so it's just like that length override that you like to use.
Okay.
You could activate the fill pattern and change it so that your sequence is now 3 or 2 steps or 5 steps instead of the regular one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Masked modulation. So on I've got a very simple sequence here. It's all Ds, and I'll add a little bit of gate variation. Okay, super minimal. I want to change it up a little bit, and what I want is for 1 or 2 notes to change in the pattern in a controlled way, but not the whole pattern. And you know, in the older builds, you can go into modulation, and you can set transpose as a modulation target, enable it, and then write out your modulations. In this case, we have a 4-step pattern, 7 semitones, 5 semitones, 3 and 2. And if I turn masking off, we have subsequence modulation on all notes in the pattern, and that sounds like this. And that's totally useful depending on what you're trying to do. It's basically you're doing chord changes on your pattern. I'm intentionally keeping this pattern to be all the same notes, so when I start enabling masked modulation, you can hear very clearly what's going on. But if you, say, had a pattern with different notes and you use a subsequencer to transpose it, that's totally valid and useful, and I use that all the time. But sometimes you want something a little more subtle. So with masked modulation, which is in sequence control page 2, I turned it on for sub 1, which is subsequencer 1. There's also sub 2, both subsequencers, external mods, and both of those, and then all modulations. We're just going to do subsequence 1 for now. So, and I'm starting to add badges, so the S1 with the mask on the pitch page indicates there's some modulation on pitch. And I start the sequence, I don't hear anything. But if I start to select steps, I'm going to bring this up an octave so it's a little easier to hear.
Jim,
So
can you pin
basically-
yourself?
Yeah.
There's another T-shirt. 512. Jim, can you pin yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
That
We're going to show up to
doesn't sound
NogCon next
great,
year with
but,
these weird
yeah.
T-shirts, and everybody's going to be like, what have you guys been smoking?
I am the center of attention. There you go.
And of course, I can go into the subsequencer and start doing more aggressive modulations.
Oh. I can hear the kick drum.
Oh, yeah, we can bring that back in.
Yeah, yeah. And then you'd mute your melody on step 1 and 5 at least, and then you're off to the races.
So now, you can treat this as like, this is the program and I'm just going to leave it alone, but you can also treat this as a performance tool. So that's your bass pattern, and then you just pick one.
Oh, oh,
That's
And
pretty
now you can
sick.
start.
oh,
bringing
oh. Alright, that's just changed my life. For the better. Wait, not for the worst.
in. Why didn't I take the time to put that clap in? I don't know. And then a select trick you probably don't know about is, thank you, Shift, Edit, Select will invert the selection.
Oh, that's cool.
How do you invert the selection? What did you do?
Shift, Edit, Select.
Alright. Shift. Edit. Okay, cool.
That will be in the help page.
Yeah, brilliant.
I need to remind me. So that's kind of the base of masked modulation. Now, there is a downside to doing this, is that it's convenient to have no selection, run the sequence, and start selecting steps to introduce the new changes. But of course, if you say, no, I only really want step 8, and it's always going to be step 8, and I may want to use selection for other tasks. You know, and this came up almost immediately, and I knew it would, is that somehow I need to make it so you can store a selection and use it just to mask modulation. And there's room and presets to do that. I just have to figure out exactly what that UI looks like, and it'll probably be another parameter, move these guys over and add something in here. But it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to add some movement to a pattern, and it can be very subtle or it can be very out there.
So does this apply to evolution and things like that as well, the masking?
Not yet.
Okay, cool.
That's on the list of things to look at. Gen and Evolve are a little unusual in that, well, yeah, they Evolve looks at the whole sequence and picks different, you know, pick 2 random steps and swap their pitches, right? So that doesn't make sense for masking. So I need to find other ways to treat that with masking.
Well, now that you have the undo feature, it's kind of, you can achieve a similar thing, or you know what I mean. It's not the same thing, but you can certainly control the evolution a bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. I'm definitely going to be using the hell out of that gradual revelation of the masked parameter. That's brilliant. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great trick, and you know, and we just have to figure out how to use that with fills and then be able to exit cleanly into back to our groove. It's going to be the winter of techno over here at 512.
I like it.
Techno is coming, yeah.
So,
oh my
God. Okay, any more questions? Anything? We'll close out with a few more minutes from Trovarsi and ALX 106's set from KnobCon. Want to thank everybody for dropping in. Apologies for the issues getting online. Nothing like software updates to break everything. Yeah.
I'm just checking just checking the chat. I think we've covered it. We talked a little bit about being able to record MIDI out from the drum fills and being able to record the drum fills as MIDI signal and then muck around with that. And we had, yeah, I think we're up to date.
Cool.
Winter of Techno album title, first track, Kick Assault. Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Kick
Assault.
Assault. That's great.
And then Kick Assault, what's it called? Return, We're All Good. Yeah. Very good. Excellent. Well, yeah, I guess if that's the questions.
Thanks for having me here. It was fun.
Oh, always.
Yeah, me too. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone
Great.
in the chat too for joining us here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great to have all on. I guess the next event is going to be Los Angeles at the end of January, near the end of January, right when NAMM would normally be. And that is, what is the official name of this event?
Wait. Oh, the one that we are playing together, Alex and I?
Yeah.
It's at Gold Diggers on a Thursday night, so we don't really have a
Well, yeah,
title
and
yet,
I think
right?
Jim's talking about the Synthesizer Expo.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So the Synth Expo is the weekend prior to us playing.
Yeah.
So the LA Synth Expo is happening on January 21st, 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
And during the daytime, it's going to essentially be like a SoCal Synth Society takeover, similar to what they did in Brooklyn. So it was New York at the Brooklyn Synth Expo. So LA, it'll be the SoCal Synth Society takeover. And it'll just be 15-minute performances by all the members. Sign up. We already have some people, but I think that sign up is going to open up. We're going to officially announce it this weekend. Alex will be in town because then we play the Thursday night after, and he's going to be hosting. We have another event that we're in the works for that Saturday night too, but I don't want to say, but it is special. So yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Alex?
It's the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Synth and Pedal Expo.
Yeah.
I'll be posting stuff to the 512 site and Instagram once I kind of have everything finalized, and then yeah, Trovarsi and ALX will be playing the Thursday after. Subscribe to their Instagram channels to get notifications on that. The Synth and Pedal Expo is free to the public.
Yep.
And I plan to be there. Come by and say hi, ask me questions. We'll probably have 3.0 finalized hopefully by then. And yeah.
Good
Sounds
performances. I think they do workshops too. So in addition to all the tables, show all the vendors showing their gear and stuff, there were workshops at the Brooklyn one. So I'd imagine there's going to be a few workshops at the LA one as well. So great weekend. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing you guys in person too. Steve,
Yeah,
you have to
good.
make it out here soon.
I do. Jeff Kellum's just dropped into the chat. There's an Eventbrite link for the LA Synth Expo as well. So
Mhm.
if people are interested
Excellent.
in getting along, Eventbrite's a great way to arrange your social life if you have one, or you could start one with this event. There,
Yes.
sold.
Very good.
Yeah, just want to say again, Trovarsi and ALX, thanks so much for the performance clip and the conversation. It's always great hearing how artists are using these technical things, because obviously this is a sequencer and a system that's built for people to make music with, and seeing and chatting with people of your caliber is always a great education. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
No problem.
Alex.
Thanks for having us. What up?
Tonight,
Yeah.
give us a lowdown before you jump
Uh,
off.
I'm playing at the Black Box in Denver with Richard Devine, Man-Made Madman, and Love Cosmic Love. We do a night called Patched Out here in Denver every third Friday, and it's like a modular hardware based dance party, and it happens at the Black Box. This is our 1-year anniversary party, which is really awesome. So we've been doing it for a full year at this
Wow.
space. And we've got Richard headlining this time. And we're in the big room. There's 2 rooms at this place, so it should be really fun.
That's
Awesome.
amazing.
I wish I was there.
Yeah, that'd be
Got a
great.
Great sound system there too.
Yeah, it's one of the best systems in the state for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember years and years and years ago seeing Richard Devine play a set at a planetarium there, a big party there with the Schematic guys. Yeah.
So cool.
Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Richard Devine, Planetarium. It's just all,
Oh yeah, it was,
still
it was
waiting to
wild.
happen.
Yeah.
It was wild. So, all right, well, we're going to close up with a little more of Trovarsi and ALX playing at KnobCon. The full set's on YouTube, and they'll be playing in Los Angeles into the end of January. And check everybody's Instagram, keep up to date on events, and you can find me on email and Instagram and on Facebook. Give me feedback on the new beta software, and yeah, we'll see you next time in the next live stream.
Brilliant. I heard someone's doorbell, but I can't hear the.
Yeah, hang on.
The doorbell was good though.
Let's try the
Surprising.
share thing again. Technical snafus.
Did you enable audio in the pop-up box that comes?
I did.
Oh. Lucky this isn't all live.
It looked like it was just the video was muted.
Oh.
There you go. right, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Have a good evening, man. Go out and have a good time on this
Thanks. Have a good
winter
show.
Saturday night. Techno winter.